Welcome to Cruise Ship Crime Investigators, the book series. Book 2, Serial Killer.
Chapter 9, Formal Identification. Ruby enters the medical centre and is pointed towards the consulting room. The red light says, "No entry in use." She knocks and goes straight in. It is a basic examination room, a bed on a trolley, a desk and a chair where Betty Clifford sits below an X-ray film light box. She looks both sad and afraid. A worried Malaysian nurse sits with her, holding her hand, but stands when Ruby moves closer, allowing her to take the chair. Before she can settle, Captain Neil enters. "Betty, this is Captain Neil Reynolds. My name's Ruby." "Mrs. Clifford, I'm so sorry it's been such a horrid night," Neil says softly. He has had to give notice of death many times. "I still don't know what's going on," Betty says. "Where is Eric?" "Unfortunately, we found a body in the sea, and your husband is missing. We need you to take a look," Neil explains softly. "No, it can't be. We've been together 40 years, never been apart," Betty cries. "He'll turn up drunk. Always does. I wish he'd stop drinking." Neil takes her hand, and she gets to her feet. He puts his arm around her. She is resistant, but Neil leads her through to another room. Though a strong lady, she sobs with fear. He comforts her, and they stand by the body, hidden under a white sheet, knowing the inevitable as the cruise card was in his pocket. Neil indicates for the nurse to fold back the sheet. Betty buckles at her knees and gasps for air. "No, no," Betty begs. Neil holds her up. "Betty, I'm sorry, but I need to hear you formally identify that it's him." It's not him. That's not Eric," Betty whispers, exhausted by emotions. "Betty, the body has been in the water, so he might look different. We need you to be sure." "It's nothing like him." Puzzled, Neil walks her to a nearby chair. "Mrs. Clifford, I brought both your passports down," Ruby starts. "What was your maiden name?" "Harris," she says. "Been a long time since I used that. Have you ever used any other name? An alias?" Betty shakes her head. "And your husband, has he always used Eric Clifford?" Betty nods. The captain wonders where this is leading. Ruby checks the face against the picture on her guest information sheet and the passports. She allows the nurse to cover the body. "She's right. It's not him," Ruby agrees. "Of course I'm right. I know my husband. Where is he?" Betty cries. "Drunken sod." "Has he done this before? Stayed out all night?" the captain asks. "Every cruise," Betty blurps. "Enjoys himself far too much." "We'll find him, Betty," Neil reassures her, passing the woman to the nurse. "Let me get you some water." "I'll take a large gin." Neil grabs a disposable cup and fills it with water. He hands it to her. "I'll work on the gin." Neil and Ruby walk out and stop in the consulting room confused. "Never been apart in 40 years, Neil starts. "But he stays out all night, drunk," Ruby snaps with a little annoyance. "I found this." The captain reads the poem. "Sometimes one man carried various names. This may hide individuality and make a book a scatter of featureless puppets, rather than a group of living people. But once good is told of man, and again evil, and some would not thank me for either blame or praise." "Where's this from?" Neil asks. "It's from Lawrence of Arabia. But are the featureless puppets our masked ball guests? We played Lawrence of Arabia in the cinema, long before we went through the Panama Canal. I watched it. I don't remember those lines," Neil says, punishing himself. "It's from the introduction of the book. I have no idea what they mean." "No, but we do have at least 2 dead bodies and a third missing person. Could drunken Eric be our murderer, and now he's in hiding? But only 2 missing at our muster station's roll call. Maybe the body on the table in there is off another ship, Ruby asks. There is no other ship for miles, and he must be from this ship to have had Mr. Clifford's cruise card in his pocket, Neil suggests. But no one's missing, Ruby restates. No guest. Check the crew records. Dr. Simon Yates enters. Neil turns to the doctor. You'd better label him unknown and do a full autopsy. The Y incision and removal of organs you see on TV is just the start. Checking the stomach contents, I can do. I can collect samples. I can do a head and brain examination. But without proper tests, there can be no conclusion. Keep meticulous records, pictures and samples, and keep me fully informed. Thanks, Simon, Neil says. Neil walks out of the room and exits the medical centre, with Ruby following him. Ruby, ensure Jason from photography realises he is a key member of this team. Have him photograph the body and run the facial recognition software. I'm on it, sir. And find Mr. Clifford. If he's dead, we have a serial killer. Chapter 10. First Call. A yellow cab pulls up at Kieran and Hunter's unit. They wade out of the flood and tape a sign on the window. Inquire next door at Wild Mary's Diner. The key is turned. Should we not leave the door open so the water can flood out, then the ships might be able to sail right up, Kieran mocks. The place would get wrecked, Hunter says, opening the cab door. Where to? The driver asks. Dodge Island, Hunter replies. I thought all these units had been flattened, the driver says, pulling away. Kieran turns to Hunter, then to look out of the window, lips pursed. Remember when we had real jobs? You know, for the world's biggest cruise operator, Kieran asks. How do you measure biggest? Money, wealth, power, number of ships? Office? Number of customers, number of awards? They can all find a reason to be number one. Hunter pauses for effect. But they all have one thing in common. Give me a clue. When they have a problem, who they gonna call? Kieran thinks for a moment. Ghostbusters. Hunter shakes his head. Okay, I give up. Who? Kieran asks, really pushing Hunter's buttons. Hunter ignores him. Yeah, who? Interrupts the cab driver. 'Cause my brother, he's good at sorting stuff out. He's got a boat, and lots of friends. You know what I mean. Which terminal do you want? Can you drive the loop and then drop us off by the firehouse? Hunter asks. Sure. What's the big problem? Let me call him. He has friends who work in the firehouse, the driver continues, but they ignore him. Dodge Island is the cruise centre of the world, housing buildings, terminals, car parks and ships. It is huge and impressive. Why don't we have an office here? Kieran asks, amazed at the sheer size of the industry. This is a whole island of cruising. It's endless. It would drive you mad, trust me. Wild Mary's would seem like a Buddhist retreat if we had a place here. The cab stops by the firehouse, and the two men step out. Kieran, still with wet sneakers and socks, is shaking them as he tries to catch Hunter, who is off at speed. Is it far? 3 blocks down. We're late. Why didn't the cab driver drop us there? His brother's looking for work and he's a hustler. This is our game and it's gonna stay ours. Wait! Kieran slips out of his shoes, takes off his wet socks and slips his pumps back on. That's a better look, Hunter says, pointing at the rubbish bin on the sidewalk for his socks. I was going to wash and dry them. You don't need white socks where we're going. Don't they wear socks a few blocks down? They don't wear socks in the middle of the Pacific. We're catching a ship? Which one is ours? Kieran asks, pulling his passport from his pocket to check it's there before reseating it in safely. Our ship's in the middle of the ocean, 2 days out, too far for a chopper. The operator's not turning the ship around, so they rang us. Because of our new teleporting invention, Kieran asks. My guess is they want us to drop in. A little more extreme than Madeira, but no one will be shooting at us. Drop in to the Pacific. It's what we do, Hunter says. Is it? Before nightfall. I'm so glad you told them we were busy, because the answer is no, this is not what we do. We both did it for years. When we were younger, not now, we've both had desk jobs for years. We're old. We're cruise ship crime investigators, the extreme version. Like the Flying Doctor, but flying detectives. I knew you'd get there in the end, Hunter smiles, turning on the verge of grass towards the office block and looking up. And why is there a rush? Kieran asks, still off the pace. Because the customer's in a panic, Hunter draws as he holds the door open for Kieran to follow. When asked, just say, no worries. I'm not Australian. They won't know. What might their worries be? Hunter lets the door swing closed, and Kieran stands, cooled by the efficient air conditioning. Let's go. They're in a panic, Hunter encourages. No worries, Kieran replies, barely moving. Is there spare office space here? No. No worries. Can you speed up? They had 2 or 3 murders overnight. Maybe it's not the right place for an office. That's not their biggest worry. What's that? Kieran asks, watching Hunter press the elevator button for floor 18. Our fee, he smiles. What is our fee? They never asked, which is why they should worry.